Becky, this is Spoonie Squared, and today we're going to be talking about reasonable adjustments at work when you have autism. Now, first thing I want to say is this. When we think about adjustments at work or asking for accommodations, a lot of people get very worried, like you're asking your employer to sacrifice something. When actually what you are doing is giving your employer the opportunity to get the best out of you as the talent in their business. Now, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am autistic, and I also have experience being in a leadership position. I've been a CEO, COO. I've worked in management positions in lots of different companies. So I actually know what it's like to come from two different sides of the equation. In addition to that, I work a lot in the field of leadership and ethical, inclusive, impactful leadership. So I really try and keep up to speed with what is going on in the field of leadership and what makes a good organization and what makes good organizational talent strategies in particular. And this includes, how do we bring out the best in all talent? So I thought it'd be fun today to look at some suggested reasonable adjustments and whether or not I think they are good for me as an autistic person and whether they are good for me as somebody who is in a leadership role in a business. And these are adjustments that I've found online that get suggested by various different people. So the first one is paid time off when needed. Now, for many people here in the UK, this would kind of fold into your sick pay, statutory sick pay. It's not the same in all places in the world. Not every business has the same policies. Now, this is one that, as an autistic person, I definitely think paid time off when needed can be very, very helpful. I feel like in my career, I haven't really had this very much because I've generally been an entrepreneur or running my own businesses. So if I don't work, I don't get paid because the work doesn't get done. And so it would have been amazing all of that time to have not had the stress of not getting paid, and probably at various points in my life I would have got kind of over, whether it be like an autistic burnout or been able to just readjust myself a lot more quickly if I'd have been able to take time off and know that it wasn't going to affect my bills. Now, this one comes as when I put my kind of leadership hat on, it definitely comes with a little bit of fear. And so I think it's quite a big one to ask for, because as a leader, people will be thinking, well, that could be indefinite. What do you mean paid time off? You know, you could hire somebody, spend all that money on hiring somebody, and they never ever come to work. So there's, and I think one of the things we have to do in all of this is realize that people who are in the workplace actually want to come to work and want to get the work done and feel good about getting their work done. And if we come from that premise and we work with people to nurture them and recognize that ultimately, if over time there's a pattern that says the work never ever gets done, then that's going to be a problem. But actually, by offering up front something that relieves that stress, relieves that anxiety, it can be very helpful. On the flip side, I think there's definitely been times when I actually needed the pressure of getting back into work to regain my momentum again, because as autistic people, or certainly for me, not having any momentum is really damaging. If I'm kind of in a position where my routines are no longer going, if I've had time off, if I'm sick, actually having some impetus to get back to work is very helpful for me as well. So I think this one is a bit of a like on the fence one. I think it really has to be done well. The next one is fixed hours rather than variable shifts. In theory, yes, that would be really good, kind of knowing what's going on and knowing every single day. This is something I really crave, and I guess as an autistic person, as a person, whatever, I do really crave fixed hours, but I actually cannot do fixed hours because I find that if I get burnt out, if I've got other things going on, I like to be able to kind of do things when my energy is at my best. So I do kind of, broadly speaking, have fixed hours, but there is some flexibility within that, and that actually works better for me. But I know many autistic people do prefer to have fixed hours. From an employer's perspective, fixed hours are often quite helpful as well. Not in all places, but actually it means that things are known, so it can be quite helpful. The workspace. The location of the workspace, the brightness, the noise, the sound. Honestly, I would work right here every single day if I possibly could. Going into an office, I made a video about this before, is definitely challenging. And actually, for me, what I do is just try and not have to be in the office all that often. And if I am, maybe that's when I'm going to do meetings or face-to-face kind of work. So sitting at the desk at an office, I do like to know kind of what the setup is. I don't like to feel like I'm in a situation where there's kind of lots of noise, lots of distraction, lots of talking. So this is something that I want, but like I said, for me, it's kind of overridden by the fact that I'm like, don't make me be at any workspace that's not like in my own home. Although we'll come on to that in a minute. So you can, and certainly as an autistic person, you can for sure ask for a workspace that's going to fulfill like your sensory needs. So this is quite an easy one to ask for. It's quite an easy one to accommodate on the whole. Extra breaks to enable relaxation. I've actually noticed this about myself, that if I work for say 3 hours, then have a break, and then another 3 hours, then have a break, then another 3 hours, I can actually kind of I do more throughout the day, and those breaks don't have to mean like, oh, I'm stopping completely. So early in my career, I used to get to lunchtime and I used to be so frazzled and so done that I would kind of collapse and just shut down, and then I would have to go home, and that would be the end of the day. So if we don't ask for this kind of accommodation, then actually you're probably missing out on lots and lots of extra opportunity to do your work, to be creative, and for the employers, you're missing out on the opportunity for people to be able to show up. Now, doing this in the workplace is weird for me. Like, I don't know that I could work. I don't know if I could relax if I was actually in a workspace. So for me, it's kind of getting to work from home means that I feel like I can then take those moments for relaxation. I guess when I've been in workspaces, it would be things like going out for a walk would help with this. And I do that multiple times a day if I'm kind of in a workspace for the entire day. Adjustments in the way in which assessments are carried out. So I guess this is about kind of progress tracking. Perhaps you have to do exams for your job. Perhaps you have to be assessed in different ways. Now, this is, again, I think that this is a grey area on this one, because at the end of the day, autistic person or not, there are certain things that you have to fulfill if you're in certain roles. And so there are some aspects of the things that you're being assessed on that are really important to continue to be assessed on. I would argue that anything else in the assessment, maybe the way it's done, are not being done very well if they're not being done in an inclusive way. So it's, like I said, it's one thing if there's a set of traits and skills that are required to actually do a job safely, effectively. You still need to be able to do that, but you do also need to be given the opportunity to show that you can do that through assessments. So I think that this one is one where we'd need an example really to really decide whether or not this is an easy enough one to ask for. But I think when you are thinking about this, if you want to ask for these kind of adjustments to assessments, think about it through the eyes of the employer. Are the adjustments you're asking for ones that are kind of fundamental to the role that you actually have to carry out? Or are you really just asking for adjustments that are going to help you to show up and showcase your skills and your talents? The next one, a clear routine and work schedule. I really struggle when there's not clear expectations given by employers, and so this is one that I really like. It's not so much a routine. Again, I find that sometimes I kind of vary in order to get the best out of me, and that's because my energy levels vary so much. And they don't go in a nice schedule. They go when they feel like going, or you know, if there's been a busy day, then I'm gonna need a rest day afterwards. And so for me, it's not so much about having like this. And in fact, I would hate it if an employer was like, you have to be in this place at this time. I would not cope with that well at all. But I definitely, I mean, obviously I show up for like certain meetings at certain times, but yeah, I really wouldn't like it. I would feel very trapped. At the end of the day, flexible working, hybrid working is what I prefer here, but I do like clarity of expectations. So I don't like it if there's a kind of vagueness about what we're being asked to do and it's all a bit ambiguous. I like to know that if somebody's expecting me at a certain place at a certain time, that it's very clear that that's what's expected, so that I can show up for that. Because generally I will show up for that and then it turns out that, oh no, that's not actually something that they wanted, or they're not around, or we're not meeting then anyway. I don't like that. The next one is a relaxation of triggers for disciplinary action, especially if it's come from illness or perhaps executive dysfunctioning. So again, I think that this is a grey area, and looking at it through the lines of myself as somebody in a leadership role and trying to establish good structures and processes, I would never want to put in triggers for disciplinary proceedings that are going to be around whether or not somebody might have some kind of executive dysfunctioning challenge. That's not really how it would work in a good organization as far as I'm concerned. So I do think it's absolutely okay to ask for a relaxation of these triggers. The reason I say it's a grey area is, again, if there are things going on, if you're in high pressured situations and you're consistently not able to show up, and that's what your job is and that's what you have to do, then there is something here where you do need to have a conversation with yourself as an autistic person, and be able to look through the eyes of the organization and say, is this the right place for me? And so a lot of this is about, like, is it the right fit in terms of an organization? I mean, the idea that there is disciplinary proceedings because of sickness, again, like, that to me is very poor organizational building. That's very poor leadership and management, if that's the case. But if somebody's not able to show up and do their work consistently, then that is another conversation. And again, we're talking about different kinds of organizations. If we're talking very big organizations, they have larger budgets, etc., then being able to accommodate you over time, especially if there's and being able to look after you, this is a really important thing to be able to do. We have to be able to look after one another and those who are, the talent within our organizations. Talking as somebody who's run some very small companies and then kind of grown those companies a little bit, having somebody out long-term sick actually can completely kill the entire company. So it's very difficult, and I think you do have to look through the eyes of the employer in some of the situations as well. Something I've experienced a lot, and I'd be so interested to see if you have, is benevolent oppression. And this gets onto the crux of like the parts that I really want to talk about here, where what we should be looking for in terms of accommodations in the organization are, what are the things that are going to really help us to feel confident in our work? What are the things that are going to help us feel connected and trusted by our colleagues, and that we're able to trust our colleagues? Benevolent oppression is when people are like super nice to you and they're going to look after you because you're autistic. And so for me, like, this is a big problem, where it's like, oh, and we are going to give you like all of these different accommodations and we're going to make your life so it's, you know what, let's just not give you any work, let's not give you any projects. You probably can't cope much with the pressure anyway, so why don't we just make it so you kind of sit here and you can make the tea every now and again and you can bolster my ego because I'm in charge of you, but actually I don't want to give you anything that's going to put too much pressure on you and going to make it too hard. You probably, maybe it's beyond your skill sets too. No. Like, this has happened to me a lot in my career, being an autistic person, being a woman, looking younger, having other people kind of take on these tasks and not giving me the opportunities to show up and show that I can do something. Kind of micromanaging falls a little bit into this category as well. So you really can ask for the opportunity to show up and do a job well. If there's projects that really align with your special interest and are of interest to the business, go for it. Like, these are the things that you really want to be asking for. This is what's going to help you showcase your strengths. It's what's going to help you feel energized in your work, and it helps the organization as well. So another accommodation that comes up a lot is an exemption from team meetings or team gatherings. I have a bit of a problem with this one, and it's sort of similar to that benevolent oppression piece. At the end of the day, an inclusive workplace is not one that says, oh, don't worry, you don't have to be part of these things we're doing to build a cohesive team. If an organization is looking to do things with its team members, with its talent, with everyone in its community, and it's something that is very, very difficult for you. And for me, that would be things like anything to do with drinking, pubs, like everything, going out, being in big social situations. I should not have to be allowed to opt out of those things. I should be allowed to do that because we shouldn't be doing those things in the first place. I shouldn't be excluded. And if you are arranging things that are big social gatherings there and I can't come and I'm a key member of your team, that's exclusion. Like pure and simple. That's excluding me. So when you build an inclusive organization, if you want to do things that are about bringing your team together, then you need to think about who's on that team and think about what are the kind of things that are going to be helpful in terms of bringing them together. And for an autistic person, that doesn't mean we don't ever be around other people. Far from it. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to develop the skills that are about being around other people. But it's about giving us those kind of situations in a way that feels safe for us. And if you don't know what that is, as an employer, as a leader, as a manager, talk to people, like talk to the people on your team. It's not one broad brushstroke and that fits every single autistic person. It's talk to them and make it so that it's actually things that people on your team are going to feel safe doing, because otherwise they're not going to feel like they can build trust with each other, and they're going to feel excluded if it's something where it's like, well, don't worry, you can opt out. Related to this is an exemption from meeting clients. Again, it's like, that's, to me, is benevolent oppression. You're saying to me, I know you find it a little bit tricky to be around people, so don't meet any clients. Now, if that's not in your job role, and you don't, and you want a role that is more inward facing, and that's where you spend your time, fine. But if you're in a role that does require you to meet other people, to be part of projects, to listen in, there's ways to meet clients that still feel safe. Or, I always get a little bit scared when I'm meeting external people, but as long as there's some clarity there, maybe it's about having an agenda. Maybe it's about being able to go and observe a meeting. It's doing things in a safe way. Certainly, again, it depend on the actual environment. There's many different ways to ask for accommodations. So again, I would be very careful if you are an autistic person and you want to be able to build yourself up in more of an externally facing role, or even internally facing one. For me, working with clients as part of my career and working with collaborators was a really great way of networking without having to go do the social thing, because you focus around the work with something you actually care about and something you are really focused on, and you find it easier to focus on. And that then helps you to form relationships, and those relationships carry with you. So I know it's not the same for everyone, and I'd be interested to hear what it is like for you, but that's my thoughts on that one. I think some things that can really help are anything to do with time management, scheduling. I know, get senior enough and get a PA, that's really helpful. And actually, I know people who have access to work and they have people to help in kind of PA type activities. So PA is personal assistant, so they can help with lots of things. I think that, that kind of thing, time management, scheduling, I like to have all my different tools that help me to do that, my different processes. If an employer can help with that, and actually generally a lot of these tools are supplied when you're in employment anyway, so those things can be really useful. And then flexible working. This is for me, the most important accommodation. I need flexible working, and I work on many different projects. And of course, again, it's not completely flexible, but it does, being able to know that for some aspects of the work, actually, if it's not the right time for me, I can do that work at another time. That's really important for me. I definitely feel myself sometimes getting close to autistic burnout, or I find myself just shutting down. And so being able to say, okay, now is not the right time, I need to take the break now, and then I can come back to something, I can do it at a different time. That's what's really important for me, because I still get to progress, I still get to do all the work that I love to do. And this is what it's about, right? Being able to show up, showcase your skills, showcase your talents, and that helps an organization too. So these are all the ways in which people suggest that we might want to unlock those opportunities. I think that some of them are good, some of them are less good as examples, certainly for me, and in my opinion, in terms of what actually makes good leadership and good team management. But I'd love to know what you think. So let me know in the comments. Tell me, what are the accommodations you have asked for, or are there any accommodations you're afraid to ask for in the workplace? And do go out and check out my other videos. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. And come and find me on Instagram too. I am on @Dr. Becky Sage, and I'd love to see you over there as well. Bye.